Now we're going to use the wire assignment editor of RSD to define the connections and wires between each of the ports in the instance connectors for each of these signal networks. For each of the signal networks, we need to manually define the connections and the wires. For instance, here we don't want a connection between the probe and any of the artifacts connected to that signal network. So we need to remove the connection for each of the probes and then ensure that the order of connections between each of the components is correct before finally defining that each of these connections should become a wire when we pull the information forward into a wiring sheet. So if we do this for the final signal network, we'll have defined all of the wires that the signal networks will make up, and for the remaining wires in this circuit sheet we can use the auto wire assignment to process all of the remaining wires. Now if we move into the wiring sheet, we need to run a report to collect all of the components which are not already placed on the wiring sheet. And if we run this report, we'll get a list of all of the components which we're looking for, and we can start instancing these components through RSD, which will automatically place the correct wiring shape that corresponds to the shape instanced in the circuit sheet. And if you rerun the report after having placed components, you can see that the components that are already placed on the design no longer appear within the report. So if I continue by placing the source part of the circuit, and then place the earth pins for this side and the resistors for the load side of the circuit, you can see how easy it is to bring a design defined in a circuit sheet into a wiring sheet with minimal effort from the end user. Now that we've finished placing all of the components, we're going to leave the 3 probes until we're finished processing all of the wires. To place the wires, we need to run a similar report, but instead of looking for blocks, we look for fibers. And as you can see here, there's a couple of methods that you can use for instancing fibers. You can manually instance individual fibers, or you can group select a number of fibers and allow RSD to automatically route the wires. I'm going to finish up by doing that now. And as you can see here, RSD has automatically routed all of the remaining fibers, and we have a complete wiring diagram. What we'll do now is finish by instancing the 3 probes that we placed in the circuit sheet, and this will result in the wiring diagram matching the circuit diagram. And the next useful piece of functionality from RSD is co-shapes. If we select the connector and choose its co-shape on the circuit sheet, RSD automatically opens the correct sheet with the artifact selected, and we can do the same for getting back into the wiring sheet for the amplifier. And this carries forward into the properties associated to both the circuit and the wiring shapes. As both of these components are linked, if you make a change on one sheet, the change is propagated through into the properties of the corresponding co-shape. And if we run the simulation, we can see that the output we get matches the output we had from the circuit sheet.